to the Asta Power Project June webinar. Our topic this month is to explore some of the top reasons why contractors are switching from Microsoft Project to Asta Power Project. And perhaps Asta is not a tool that you're familiar with at all. Maybe you've been using Project for some time. This is a large topic, and we won't have time to get to all the pieces. So we're gonna do our absolute best. But in the midst of all that, let's go ahead and launch in. And I want to cover a couple of housekeeping issues to start with. My name is Jim Dawkins. I'm the United States Channel Manager for Alicosoft, the makers of Asta Power Project. We have channel partners, authorized resellers throughout the United States that are local to you to help serve your needs, experts in construction scheduling. Joining me today is Megan DePody. Megan is our senior consultant here in the U.S. and works with our partners and customers implementing the Asta Power Project tool set. And she'll do the heavy lifting moving through the product, and I'll tee up some of the conversation. But in terms of housekeeping, there's a couple of things of note. Everyone today is on audio mute, so you won't be able to ask your questions verbally, but that doesn't mean you can't ask questions. In your control panel for GoToWebinar, there's a section called questions. And if you open up that section, you can submit questions at any time during the webinar. We will do our very best. As I said, it's a very large topic. We're going to hit what we think are the very top reasons people switch, but we won't hit all of them. And so there may be questions that you have about something we're not covering or something to expand upon. Given the time that we have, we will answer the questions during this live webinar. If by chance we don't get a chance to answer your question, we have your email from your registration, and we'll do our best to shoot you a quick answer via email. Most of you have my contact information, and you'll get it again at the end. So you could even just reach out to me and give me a phone call, and we could chat a bit about it. So the questions panel is your friend during the webinar. I'll be monitoring that while Megan's going through the demonstration, and at the end of the webinar, time allowing, we'll answer those questions. The other things of note is that today's webinar is being recorded, and we'll provide everyone who's attending today a link to the webinar. It takes a little while to process the recording, but we'll provide you a link to that recording later today. All of you will also receive a link to a free trial download of the software. The trial is not limited functionally in any way, just time. So you get a 14-day trial, and that trial begins from the time you install it, not when you download it. So schedule your time accordingly, and you can replicate all the things that Megan's doing today. So with the housekeeping issues out of the way, let's jump into today's presentation. There's a couple of questions I want to ask you before we start exploring those reasons, because it drives the tool that you use. It's very important to understand why you schedule. In a construction environment, are you scheduling as a part of just a deliverable in a contract, or is it a tool, an ongoing tool that you're using throughout the process? For most people, it's an ongoing tool. And they're updating the schedules. And in fact, that impacts the second half of my question. Not only why do you schedule, but when do you schedule? Do you schedule once and it's a pretty picture, or are you providing progress updates, status updates to the project as you go? Construction is unique with regard to scheduling. Things change. They always do. And our ability to reflect that change in the schedule, to document what's occurring, is really critical. for many, many reasons. We've got a contract. We've got potentially a due date with some liquidated damages associated with it. So we may need to justify a time extension for a change order. Change orders happen. This is construction. So asking yourself why you're scheduling, is it a tool for your use or simply a communication tool back to the owner? Well, that's important too. Are you able to produce the output that the owner requires? Are you able to effectively communicate your request for a time extension? Those are things I'd like you to think about as we kind of step through today's demonstration, and you think about the tool that you're using today or that you may choose to use into the future. Construction's unique. It is not always the case that you need some big, large enterprise model. The tools can be frustrating if you don't know how to use them. So ease of use is important, because we do have a day job. We've got to get that project completed, and the path to that should not be convoluted. So one of the things we want to suggest to you today is that you may not realize it, but you do have a choice. People look at Microsoft Project, they look at a complex tool, perhaps like Oracle Primavera, and believe that those are their only options. Well, that's not the only options. And so let's talk a little bit about who uses Asta Power Project, then we'll jump right into the content. Contractors across the U.S., in fact, across the world, are using Asta Power Project. We have hundreds of customers in the U.S., thousands across the globe, so there may be folks that you recognize. Alicosoft is the company behind Power Project, and it's been around. The project management tools alone, the company has been around for a very, very long time. The project management tool that you'll take a look at today has been around since '88. People are often surprised because they haven't heard of it. It's been used across the globe for a very long time. And we have over 3,600 users in the U.S., and that number is leaping dramatically every year as people become aware of their options. All right, let me tee up a bit of what Megan's going to show, and then we'll jump into the demo. So why are people switching? And certainly in our promotions, we alluded to this. And I think some people are asking, what do I mean that Microsoft Project or Asta Power Project is built for construction and Microsoft Project is not? What's the difference? Well, let's look at some specifics that occur in construction. First thing is, you have a day job. You need something that's very easy to use, and Megan will demonstrate that. In fact, we'll show you how to create a schedule very quickly from scratch. You need to be able to represent relationships or the logic between tasks in the way that we need for construction. And that requires a little bit more complexity than Microsoft Project can offer. Microsoft Project only allows one relationship between tasks. So in it, finish to start, and we may need more than one of those relationships. And Megan will certainly dig into that. Baselines. Baselines are at the heart of documenting where we were at any point in time. Microsoft has limited baselines in terms of how many you can save. The data that's stored in a baseline is limited. You can even edit the data in a baseline. Baselines are a contractual documentation of where you were at any point in time. Probably not the best idea to edit that information. It's not saving the full critical path data. There's no late start, there's no late finish in the baselines. So while those may seem like technicalities, when you come down to a delay claim, this may be critical. It's the limitation in the number of baselines may not be striking you today if you're using Microsoft Project. Construction projects are often large multi-year projects. And if you're updating the project over time, you're going to need many more baselines than project can ever provide. So we understand that. We've worked with contractors for decades now. So baselines are really really important piece of managing the change that occurs on a construction project. Full CPM, including longest path. So not everybody uses longest path. In fact, it's a topic that we don't have time to fully explore today, but longest path is available is an option, calculation option in Primavera. It's an option in Asta Power Project. Many people have discovered that it's really critical to find out, to do a calculation, not just by defining zero float as critical path, but also define what's our longest path to the end date. Where will we, while all the activities may not be on the critical path, they're probably all going to need to be done. When would we finish? So while there is some debate about which method people use, it's available and can substantiate, again, where you are and where you think you'll be. Because progress in many cases comes from the field, we'd like to be able to gather from the field. So we can, and we don't have time to go into it today, but we have a tool called Site Progress that allows your folks in the field to submit progress on task. You review it and then apply it when you progress a schedule. The other thing that Megan will certainly talk about when we talk about full CPM is that whole idea of progressing, and that's why I included it here, though we don't have time to look at it today. How you progress a schedule is really important in construction. Microsoft Project does a really, really fine job of setting up the schedule, but there's this concept of a status date that's not even required in Microsoft Project, and I think most construction scheduling professionals would be surprised. Primavera does require that. So a data date is absolutely an important and should be a required part of how you progress a schedule. I think I'll hold off there because we want to move into the software. As I said, this is a very large topic. There's a lot of details here, some of which may not be impacting you today, but we want to make sure that you're absolutely aware of that. So given that, I think it's probably time for us to take a look at some software. So I'm going to pass control to Megan. Megan, are you there?
I am.
Terrific.
All right. So, as Jim was talking about, there are a lot of kind of gotchas or pitfalls that you run into when you're starting with when you're using Microsoft Project. Why are you using Project? For most people, it's because it's already on your computer. So why would I buy something else? I know other Microsoft products, Microsoft Word, Excel. So I feel like it's easy to use. I don't think I probably need training because I'm familiar with Microsoft. So, all reasonable reasons to use something, but it doesn't really take into account the appropriateness of whether or not Microsoft Project really is going to take care of all your needs and do everything that you really need a construction schedule to do. So the first thing we're going to do, look at is Microsoft Project is designed for quick and easy schedule creation. It's one of its hallmarks. And Asta Power Project can be very complex. It can do, has all the bells and whistles of more complicated scheduling software, but it's still easy. I almost think it's easier to create a schedule here than in Microsoft Project. So I'm going to real quick show you an example of that. So I'm going to create a new schedule here, and we have templates. So within these templates, you can save activities themselves. You can save, if you're putting resources or costs in there, resource being like man loading, putting your manpower in there. You can save, setups, codes, your calendars with all your holidays and different shift work on there. There's almost unlimited things you can save in templates. So I'm going to go ahead and create something. We'll call it something other than untitled, because I think I have, nope, apparently I've used that one too. I'm not very creative in the naming of my projects. Apparently I used a different template yesterday. Anyway, so a couple of quick ways it's easy. First of all, it's very visual. I can right click and drag, and this is going to tell me how my duration of my activity as well as start and finish dates. So I can just click and drag and draw my activities that way. Interesting. So that's a very simple, easy way visually to get activities on there. So I can drag and drop them if I want to kind of put them in the right place before I add logic. Let me turn off my auto reschedule here. So if I turn it off where it's not auto calculating here, I can, so if I'm used to even working with Excel where I, put my activities where I think they should be, it's an easy way to do that. It's not complicated. It's very visual. And then I can add logic. I can draw it. So that's from the finish of one to the start of another. I can draw it from midway points. So if it's going to start, maybe say one day after that one starts, you can just drag it there and it will create that link as I drew it. So it's very easy to add logic, and you don't have to worry about terminology of is it a predecessor, is it a successor, what finish to start link or start to start link. I can just visually look and see what that's going to be doing. Along those same things, I can add in this link tasks mode. Works a couple different ways. If I click on tasks, it just adds finish to start links, one right after the other as I click on them. But I can also, when I draw them in, it will automatically add links one right after the other. So those are some kind of quick, easy ways to start to get moving. Another way that I personally like, a lot of times I will get Excel schedule, like something like this, or I might get, maybe you have an estimate or something that has a list of tasks with man hours or something. I can copy and paste straight from Excel and create those as activities. So the only reason I'm not doing start and finish is really because it's just unnecessary. If I have the duration, I don't need a start and a finish. So you can do them all if you like, but I find it easier to just do that. Really, it comes down to just making sure you have your columns in the same order. And then I can right click and paste. And I have all of those activities in the, in the spots where they were in my Excel sheet. If I don't have dates on them, I could then go and start, putting logic in, tie it to the start of the project, and that works too. I can also, if I shift click and select all of these, I also have the option for maintain task offsets. And what that does is it will create logic links that tie these activities together so that their relationship to each other is the same. So it will create like a lead or a lag as necessary, as you can see here. Keep those in the same relation they are to each other. So again, just a lot of ways to do this, especially for people who are not necessarily comfortable with scheduling terminology or are intimidated by other software. It's quick and easy. The thing I like the best about for quickly creating a schedule is, honestly, a lot of the stuff we build have very similar activities. So you can create, for whatever type of projects you do, what are called task pools. And it is a group of activities. And this group of activities have, they can have codes assigned to them, logic already in there, durations, anything else, costs, or again, resources or manpower, if you do that, already in there. And so right now, those are not a part of my schedule. They're just saved in my template. And if I decide I want them in my schedule, you just drag them over. And now I have that as a part of my project. You can see here that that's part of my project hierarchy. If I want to add my envelope in. So that's a really quick and easy way to get started. And then I just need to go and adjust and say, okay, well, this building has different columns or a different type of, pre-poured, or it's a, steel building or wood. So different kinds of things. Maybe it's, instead of curtain wall, we have a different exterior. So you can tweak it a little bit, but it gets a lot of the legwork out of the way for you. So now I'm going to jump to, from the fact that we are just as easy, if not easier, to use the Microsoft project to create a schedule. I'm going to look at some of the ways that the kind of gotchas, the things that Microsoft project you think, is looking out for you, think is helping you plan, but that once you kind of take off that first layer, there's some other stuff going on that you may not anticipate and that may end up causing problems for you. So I'm going to jump over to a schedule here that has a little more info in it already, a lot more activities and some resources and things like that. So a big reason that most people use schedules, and they're great and we need them to plan our projects, and that is true. But when people really start to have problems with the schedule, or realize that, hey, this is over our heads, we need to have a professional schedule consultant come in, things like that, is when it comes time to finish out the project, and if there are delay claims at all or liquidated damage claims, anything along those lines, you need to be able to support what you did and when you did it and why. And that can be very hard to do with Microsoft Project. Now, the first part of being able to utilize this, utilize your schedule for that purpose, for kind of going back and trying to figure out what happened when, what did I know when I knew it, why something took longer or started later, things like that, is keeping your schedule current and up to date. And that comes with regular progressing. At a minimum, it should be done once a month. Honestly, I think it actually ends up being easier if you do it weekly, because it's quick and easy at the end of the day on Friday to just go, okay, we did X, Y, and Z today or this week, because you're not having to go through as many activities. So once we get in there, we have what's called progress period. You may have seen them called data dates if you've ever used like P6 or had some P6 schedule. Really, it is just the date you are, the date that you know the information you're putting in. So if I'm updating, say like a lot of times, like I said, it's a Friday afternoon. So I will put, and I put Saturday as the data date, just so that I know it's everything that happened up until Saturday. But it's in there, and if I open one of these, you'll see there's a date. So each one of these weeks is a day. Right now on my screen, it's actually color-coded, so each of these lines is a different progress period. So I can show my update on a specific task, not just total, but it will show what happened during which week or which month, during which progress period. So when I go back and look, I can see what was happening on time or behind with a quick visual look without having to kind of go back and recreate the wheel. So as you can see here, this one had pretty much right up the red lines, right to the red line. So it was pretty well on track. This one was a little below. So it was, they didn't get quite as much done that first week as they should have. So now I'm going to change which week I am updating as of, which is changing my progress entry period. So now I'm working off of week 2. So if I come in here, this is just the lines that I'm showing. If I click these off, they will, so now those ones are gone. So it just kind of helps me keep track of where I'm updating as of. So I've got this green line here. Well, now I'm going to click this and say that, and there are a lot of ways to do this, various windows, various drop downs, right clicking. So I'm going to just show one of many ways, but I'm going to change this and say it actually is maybe 65% complete. And so now it added that, but I can see my green line here. So if I had been right on schedule, it should have been here. So it's again, a quick visual way. And I can create columns and look at what my percentages complete were, or my actual durations for each of those periods to really pin down when things happened. So say, for instance, let's find a short activity here. So this isn't the greatest one. Let's see. Here we go. So we've got this piling activity. I'm going to real quick change to, what is that? Tweet that is to May 15th here. All right, so it's week 5. So make that my progress entry period. And now I'm going to say that maybe these piles, maybe we were able to drill 98% of these piles, but we have one that maybe because of soil testing, or we had an area that didn't get backfilled correctly because of something else, that it didn't happen. Now, normally when you would update, then it would maybe drag out. And once I just undid that, come to me here. But once I put in, so let's say that as of that date, we were 98% complete. So this one, actually, we were a little ahead on the wrong week here, but 98% complete. Well, this little bit of this activity, if it is several weeks, before we actually get to finish, normally you would look at this task and say, well, why did this task that was supposed to be, a 5-day activity, how did it all of a sudden become 3 weeks? Well, we can look at this and say that 90% of it actually happened in this time period, and the other 2% is what happened here. So it gives you a good visual, and you can say, as you update, that last 2% didn't happen until the end of May, and there's this long period where we weren't doing any work, and that gives you the ability to then say, well, why was that? And you can put notes and annotations in here and things like that to say, look, we didn't because we were held up by weather or materials or whatever else it is, without just all of a sudden having this 3-week activity and having to figure out why it was 3 weeks when it really shouldn't have been. So I'm going to go back here. Another nice feature that I use a lot is you can undo anything you've done since you opened the schedule, even if you've saved or rescheduled. So you can always play around with it, and you can always go back to where you were at. Now, really the reason we update is to be able to compare. So I'm going to show you real quick how easy it is to create a baseline. So I'm going to do a quick update here. We'll make it as of week 2. I'm going to say that that's 90%. That one finished. And that this one is maybe, let's say, 30% done. So that's my update for week 2. Now I can go in here to my baseline manager and create a new baseline. So we're going to say that this is update number 3. And it will create my baseline real quick. And there it is. I forgot to change the dates in there, but it was updated as of the data date there, which was 4/17. So I can change that. And then I have to go somewhere else to change it. So for now, we'll just leave it. But I will close that, and then let me do one more update. We'll change it to week 3. Change my progress entry period. So say as of week 3, this one finished out. That one maybe only got up to 98%. The 20%. So updated a few more activities here. Then I'm going to baseline that again, just to kind of give you a quick view here of so here, yes, change that, but so I always like to, when I'm picking my baseline dates, pick them as a Sunday, a date where you typically don't have work done. It makes it a little clearer because you don't have things running over that date usually. But it can be any date. So now that I've got this, I've got some updates in, I've got some baselines created. This is one thing that really separates us from Microsoft Project. In Microsoft Project, baselines aren't saved as a complete schedule file. So it only saves some information. So when you're comparing, you can't always compare everything you want to. And you also cannot go back and revert that project back to a full project if I want to go back and look at all of the links, the logic, everything else. So here, if I want to compare, because logic could very well have changed between one update and the next, durations can change, things like that. I have many ways to look at this. The first and easiest is I can just turn on this here and it will show a line for each baseline and what the status of it was there. I apparently have multiple baselines of the same color, so it's yellow. I also apparently named both of those 3, so let's change that one to pink. Get to 4 and make it. We probably don't want red. That's critical path and tends to confuse people. We'll go green here. So now I can see quickly and visually with my baselines how my project was progressed at each of those dates. So in my first update, this one didn't have any progress. My second baseline, this green chunk is what had been done and what I knew about. Third baseline, it was the green. So it's a quick, visual, easy way to see how things have changed. Whoa, sorry. Unfamiliar mouse here. Now, this can be a lot of info, and it's not a lot of detail. There are other ways I can look at this information as well. So I can turn that off, or I can select which ones I want to look at. So if I have that turned on, I can select and deselect to only show the ones that I want to look at right now, because I can have unlimited. So if I'm updating every week on a year-long project, I don't want to look at 52 baselines. I want to look at key dates, my start, maybe when we had a big change order come in or big weather issues, and then maybe my last update compared to this one. So there are lots of ways to do it. I can also set it so that my baselines are all on their own line. So it would show kind of them as activities of their own, but with the set information. The thing I think is the most powerful here is that in my table definition, any of my information that I have, whether it be starts, finish, types of logic, I can add a bunch of different things in here. So I can add, maybe what my predecessors were. If you have, I just lost my train of thought. If you have costs or resources, you can put columns for those in there to see how that has changed. I can take any of these columns and point them to whether I want to look at them for my live schedule. My current baseline, I can set 1 as always being the current, or any of my specific baseline files. So I can put in a duration column and say, I want one to be the live one. This one I'm going to make as, say, baseline, best baseline. And I'll say And so I'm not fixed with what I can look at when. I can always look at whatever data I want from whichever of my baseline that I want without having to, jump through a bunch of hoops or revert baselines back to schedules or anything else like that, I think. Oh, I went from one. Should really remember my numbering, but that's okay. So if I put that in, I can easily see, okay, my duration stayed the same. And then if I go and do another update, I might see that, as stuff starts to get delayed, things like this, I would be able to see the changes and when they happened. So that is a huge, that really when it comes back to, forensic scheduling or going back after the fact to figure out what happened, really I have all that. As long as I keep it updated, I have all that data here. I can go back and run whatever kind of report I need. We can export to a business intelligence where it sends out all the different data and calculations that we do to make it available elsewhere. So there's so many things you can do to always make sure that I should be able to show anything I want to show at any time without really a lot of extra work, without having to hire somebody to go back and look through every one of my updates and figure out what happened. So that's really where an area where Microsoft Project is lacking, is in the baseline, because like I said, they don't store all of it. They store very specific information. You have limited ones that you can go back to. If for whatever reason, like I said, we figured out that, hey, a lot of these changes happened in February of 2016. If I'm using Microsoft Project, I can compare to that baseline. But unless before I made it a baseline, did a file and save as and saved it as a separate file, I can't go and look at that entire schedule with all its parts and pieces, with all of the logic and things, so that it makes it a lot harder to figure out what went wrong. Was it a bad schedule? Was it something on the site that we're forgetting? Things like that. The other thing is that Microsoft Project actually allows you to edit your baseline information here. So if I want to change a duration of an activity, I can do that. Oh, I hit 75 instead of 15, but that's okay. But if I can't go and change my baseline because that is fixed, it already happened. So it kind of keeps you in line and keeps you from accidentally editing things that you might need later on to be in place and to be accurate. Another thing we can do that Microsoft Project doesn't do very well is we have our histograms. Sorry, I'm having trouble speaking today. Our histograms, and we can do these for costs or for resources, either one. We can compare them to the baselines. So right now, this one is looking at electricians. Let me actually think. I'm going to change this here to one that I know has some more people assigned to it. I meant to click envelope. That's where the bricks are. So we need to find, maybe bricklayers are not assigned. That's interesting. There we go. We can do these guys. And here we go. We'll bring in, let me turn off my baselines here, makes it a little clearer. Bring this down. So we jump around between activities. I apparently opened a different schedule file than I had meant to, so things are slightly different than I was planning on. But if I come here, jump down there. So my histogram here shows my baseline, what I plan to have for electricians versus what I currently have. So I can fine. So here's some electricians. So I drag this out, my current, so that changes. And you can see the green line changing there. So it's a real-time reflection of what your schedule is doing and what your maybe manpower needs are. So it's a quick way to go back and look and say, well, the reason we need, we weren't able to do it, make up the time we had lost is, maybe according to the baseline, when you originally planned this schedule, you planned for us to have 30 people here this day. And that's what we would have needed to do to fix this plan. And maybe we just flat out don't have 30 employees. Maybe it's these 30 employees all would have needed to be in one small room. That's not going to work either. So you can graphically show in relation to your baseline why maybe, again, you can do this with costs, why you spent the money you did, or why you ended up having to take longer because of manpower issues, things like that. So back to, I'm going to kind of jump backwards here a little bit, is just some basic kind of gotchas that once you start using project, not necessarily related to your updating or baselining, but things that don't quite work like you think they should, or might end up kind of getting you after the fact. One is that it can be hard to make it look how you want it to look, as opposed, for like formatting and grouping things together. So it's really easy here. If you just highlight activities, you can hit summarize and it will group them together, and you can, indent and outdent those bars as you want. They show up here in my project hierarchy. I can color them however I want. You have a lot of different creating filters and different groups and sorts and views. It's really easy to do. So I can really, with a click of a button or a couple clicks, get it to look how I want it to look every time. And then it's a print. What you see is what you get. So if I go to file and print, however I had it looking on my screen, with the exception of a scaling issue here, we do not need one page vertical. Oh, that's my problem. I am working on a project that has way early dates here. So we're going to just, there we go. That looks a lot more normal here. But however I had it, the columns I have, the coloring, whatever I am showing, that is what is showing up on my schedule when I print it. So if I don't like something that's on here, I have a couple of things that I can do. If I go into the print preview, maybe I don't want to show my, my logic, my link lines. I can just turn those off, hit print, but when I go back to my schedule, it'll still be how I was looking at it. So I have a lot of options. Or I forgot that I really did want to show my baselines when I print. I can just click it, turn baselines on, I can print and go back. So there's a lot of options, a lot of ways to make it look and print it easily and quickly to show whatever you need to show to communicate to whoever it is you're communicating with. Again, I showed the copy from Excel. You can copy and paste right back into Excel. So if you have a report you're already having to send in, you can just copy and paste the info you've got, and it's row for row, column for column, kind of a copy and paste from it to and from Excel. We also have the ability to export to a BI, and run reports straight to Excel. So you can specify what information you want to go, and it can go out there and create a fancy report, whether it's an HTML or an Excel. And they're easy to do, and they're flexible. Like I said, you can make them look with almost unlimited possibilities on how you can make them look. I think the one thing I forgot to mention that I know Jim had mentioned too was the data date when we're updating. Yeah, briefly mentioned it. We have progress periods here. In Microsoft projects, your calculations are always done based on your project start. So in theory, if you don't know this and go through several steps to eliminate this happening, when I update, I could have things like this activity here as maybe having no actual assigned to it. I could say it's 0% complete, but it wouldn't push it out to where my data date or progress period date is, which it should. If I'm saying it hasn't happened, then in theory it still is yet to happen, even if I lost my train of even if I haven't put any actuals to it. So unless that is an activity that doesn't actually have to happen, I need to make sure that I update that accordingly, or it's going to move out and push everything behind it. So that is a huge kind of red flag, a huge thing that I know you don't necessarily always notice is happening when you're updating in projects, but it is, that it will leave things with no actual start or finish dates, no percent completes, it'll leave them sitting in the past. So, this schedule is example, maybe we're all the way up to June now, and I'm going and I'm updating it sometime in June, and I didn't put in anything for, maybe any of these activities. Rather than when I hit reschedule, in theory, according to true scheduling calculations, it should move and say, well, its predecessor, the activity before it has finished, it was supposed to happen a month ago, so it's just going to keep pushing it, in both Asta Power Project and things like P6, it's going to push it to being, it needs to start tomorrow, unless you add some new logic in, change the activity, and do things like that. Whereas in Microsoft Project, it will just leave it and sitting and have those April dates, even though it still hasn't happened yet. So that can really lead you to skipping over activities when you're reviewing things and missing pretty big potential issues. So that is my really kind of quick overview as to why we have a lot of people that are saying, you know what, Microsoft Project just isn't doing it for me because I'm using it for my projects, but at the end, we always have this huge problem of trying to go and prove our point and show why we're due change orders or why we shouldn't have to pay liquidated damages and things like that. And so rather than having to, at the end, hire a scheduling consultant to go back and dig through and try and recreate what happened, I can instead spend a little bit of money and time up front creating a schedule in a full, true CPM scheduling software that I can then just go back to at any time and have the data that I need really at the tip of my fingers all the time. So I know we're cutting it short, but Jim, do we have any questions?
Yeah, we have a ton of questions, so I'm gonna leave you as presenter for just 1 second, and then I'll switch back to me. But if you could just do the file open dialog box and do the drop down. So one of the questions was, hey, I have to use Microsoft Project. So the short, there's several things you should know. Number one, can we open Microsoft Project files? Yes. There's an XML there. If you have an MPP file and you have Microsoft installed, we can open that as well. If Megan, if you'll go to the file save as, you can see we can also open Primavera files as well. So the same is true at the other end. If the owner requires the Microsoft Project file, I can save it to an XML. If you have Microsoft Project installed, we'll use their routine to create the MPP file, send it off to the owner. We have customers that are using Asta Power Project, providing files in spec formats. And the owners may or may not be aware that they're not actually using that tool. So we have no difficulty migrating the information. So with that, I'm going to switch to mine real quick and answer a couple of additional questions because we've got quite a few that came in. Someone was asking about, do we have a claim digger type product? We have a product called Project Comparison that is included as a part of your Asta Power Project ownership. It's a separate standalone product that will compare projects, files. However, you can also make use of the rather extensive, because we can open multiple projects and have all the baselines open, there's a lot of comparison you can do right from within the tool. Have all those projects open as well. But we do have a project comparison tool in the vein of Claim Digger. I was asked a question about can you cut and paste progress from Excel? Absolutely. Any column in that spreadsheet you can cut and paste. And one of the things Megan was talking about with what you see is what you get. The other thing people will do is save views. Megan was making use of views. Many views of the very same project, because there are so many columns of data that you can open up. So folks will have a progress view that opens up the progress columns. Just because you close them doesn't mean the data disappears, but it makes it a lot quicker, easier. With that much data, one can be overwhelmed very quickly. There was a question about, how are the task pools different from just a file save as? Because that's what I'm doing in project. I'm just saving a Microsoft project file, and when I get one that's similar, I just save as and start over. Well, the challenge we hear over and over again that many of you have probably already run into, and this is true for any tool with a file save as, is that you've got all this embedded data that you've got to now remove. So the wonderful thing about task pools, for those of you that are familiar with P3, prior version of Primavera, they were often called fragnets. They're standalone little components that have just the amount of information you want in them. They haven't been progress. They don't have any actual dates. They're scheduled. You can add a start date or a constraint at the beginning, some kind of logic at the beginning. And so you get these chunks of repeatable operations and tasks and activities that you do on a regular basis. And as Megan mentioned, they can even be loaded with resources. We didn't get to that. There's some questions about resource loading. We have histograms, cost loading. Unfortunately, we don't have time to do all of that. We'd be happy to in fact, let me offer to you a few different types of resources. Let me circle back, answer one more question. One of the other real questions that people present to us frequently from Microsoft Project is, as Megan mentioned, why are you using it? Well, it may have been loaded. It may be required. I think I've addressed that. It may also be that you get the least pushback because the price is pretty reasonable for a lot of different reasons. So one of the things that we offer with Asta Power Project is something called a concurrent or server license. Most of our customers, except for our full-time schedulers, are part-time schedulers. They're project managers. They're using scheduling sometimes. There are consultants clearly who use it all the time. Well, why would you pay for a full standalone copy sitting on your desktop or even in the cloud if you only are going to use it now and then? Well, that's where a shared or server license is perfect. So, and we have for one user license, we have, well, that's nice. We have as many as, I don't think I really want Skype updated. People need to turn everything off on your computer when you're doing a webinar. So one of the things I was going to say is one server license can be shared by, we often see as many as 3 to 5 different people, depending on how often they use it. You can't have more than one at a time in one concurrence. You can buy as many as you'd like. That makes it, the bottom line is Asta Power Project can actually be less than Microsoft Project in terms of a per user effective cost. I think people are surprised by that on a regular basis. Okay, I'm now, let me just look through my list of questions. Oh, there was a question about spell check. There is a spell check in the system. It's on if you are playing with the trial, it's on the view ribbon. It's on the upper right-hand corner. There's a lot of terminology that can be challenging in construction, but it'll do its very best to do the normal spell check. You can add to the dictionary if you need to. There was a question about undo. Our undo is unique. Most products, and this is not a comparison with Microsoft Project, because most products will undo back to a a save command. And in Microsoft Project, you need to be careful and save it. It will save upon close, but there's no. But you need to be careful about that. You, however, cannot undo past a save. In Asta Power Project, you can. So you may have hit save because you'd entered some very critical information. You wanted to make sure that was recorded and documented and saved, but perhaps you wanted to back up some of the calculations. So you can do that. We can move well beyond that. The only thing that closes out the undo library of possibilities is closing the project. There was one. Okay, so we're at the. There's one other question here about resources, and unfortunately, I'll send a quick follow-up email to that question. I don't have. Unfortunately, that would take just a little bit more time than we have left. So this is certainly a large an area with lots of different data points. We could spend there are a lot of these pieces that I think we could spend a little time digging into, and based upon your feedback, we'd be happy to do that. Or are there other features within Asta Power Project that you'd like us to dig into? What other ways can you explore Asta Power Project? You'll receive a link to the recording so you can revisit some of the information that we presented today. You'll receive a link to a trial download, again, good for 14 days from the date of installation. Play with it yourself. It's not limited in any way. You can take advantage of our monthly webinar series. We've got a new version of the software coming out, 14.03. They've got a lot of 4D capabilities that are coming out, something we didn't even touch on that's not available in Microsoft Project. And so we'll certainly talk about those in our July webinar. You can visit us on LinkedIn. You can go to YouTube. We have a YouTube channel, and there are tutorials on how to use Asta Power Project that highlight a lot of the features we're talking about. We've just completed our spring series of conferences. We were at AACE in Orlando here just this month, a few weeks ago. May have seen some of you there. Conferences are a great way to get a personal demonstration of the software. Get through the busy construction summer season. We'll be at CMAA in October, and then late January into February, we'll be at the CPM conference that we attend every year. You also should have, here we go, astapowerproject.com and my email, jim.dawkins@alicosoft.com, and our toll-free number there at the bottom of the screen. Look for the additional follow-up emails. That also has my email address on it. You can just reply, and we'll get to your additional questions if you think of them after the fact. I'd like to thank everyone for carving out a lot of time today to spend some time to explore Asta Power Project, to help understand how we serve the construction community and the differences that make us so strong within that contractor world. So thanks so much for everyone attending. I'm going to end our webinar for now, and we'll see you next month.